Do you have an exciting message for your church? But how will you communicate it? Find out next on the Church Revitalization Podcast.
Hello, and welcome to the Church Revitalization Podcast, brought to you by the Malphurs Group team, where each week we tackle important, actionable topics to help churches thrive. And now, here's your hosts, Scott Ball and AJ Matthew.
Welcome to the Church Revitalization Podcast. My name is Scott Ball. I'm joined by my friend and co-host, AJ Matthew. AJ, glad to see you on this Holy Week, Easter week.
Holy Week, Easter week. Hey, happy Easter to everybody coming up. And if you're listening to this after the fact, hope it was great.
Yes. And in fact, you know, if you're listening to this later, this will be a good podcast for you. It's good for you before Easter, but also after Easter. I assume that maybe after Easter, you might have some new people to the church, or maybe some people who are thinking about joining your church, and you want to communicate who you are as a church, where you're going, what your vision is. But this is a challenge, AJ, for a lot of churches. I think a lot of pastors maybe don't know if they're the vision guy. And so they maybe are hung up a little bit on how to communicate a vision to their church. So that's our focus today on the podcast. How can we communicate and improve our vision communication strategy? So we actually have 3 questions that we're going to both ask and answer on today's podcast, that if you kind of ask these questions yourself as a pastor and think through them, it will help you maybe be better at communicating your vision in your church.
Yeah, we're not going to do a deep dive on vision development. Although we are going to touch on that in our first question. So a little bit of this content is assumed, but we have other podcast episodes on vision, and would certainly love to go deeper on that later if you would like to hear more about vision development too. If you're listening on or watching on YouTube, put that in the comments if you would like a little bit deeper dive on developing a vision, because we would love your ideas on future episodes as well. But jumping in, our first question that we're asking to improve vision communication first is, what exactly is the visionary message? So this, again, we're not a super deep dive, but just getting into some of the basics of vision in the church. We need to identify what our basic content even should be in our vision. And, you know, some of the most basic explanation would be that the vision is a picture of the future when your church is living out its mission to make mature disciples of Jesus. So we have to establish this. This has got to be something that gets accomplished, you know, by the leadership team in the church, the, you know, upper level leadership teams or teams, in really identifying what exactly are we doing together? What's this going to look like in the future? And so that's kind of it in a nutshell. And the context for your church, it will be unique to you. So that's the other thing to keep in mind. Especially in differentiating mission and vision. Mission is universal for the church to make mature disciples of Jesus, but the context in which that plays out for you, wherever you are in the world, then that's something that needs to be captured in your vision, that it's meaningful for your church and for your surrounding community, that what you're going to accomplish as the Church of Jesus Christ will be unique to you and meet the needs of those closest to you. And of course, it needs to be a clear and compelling message. Vision should be something that really captures people's emotions and energy and builds unity in the church to go after it together.
Yeah, I mean, put simply, do you know who you are and where you're going? And can you communicate that in some way? And why would anybody care? What's different about where your church is going from the church down the street? And while the church down the street, you and the church down the street might share, hopefully you share a common mission in the Great Commission. The culture of your church is a little bit different. The composition of your church is a little bit different. The resources, the specific location and neighborhood that you're in, all of those things kind of factor in a different overall direction, just like the church in Ephesus is different from, you know, the church in Rome, and certainly different from the church in Jerusalem. And every church that Paul was involved with, either directly or indirectly, had a different role to play. And your church has a unique role to play. What is that? And can you communicate that? Can you succinctly describe what it is. I in prepping for this episode, AJ, I was thinking a little bit about a non-church example, and I was thinking about Apple products. There's all different kinds of. I am an Apple. I am an Apple advocate. AJ is not, and so, but there's all kinds of computers, and they all do basically the same thing. So why would someone want to purchase an Apple product versus a less expensive Dell product or a Chromebook or something like that, right?
I can't answer that.
You can't answer that question. So that's a question, though, that Apple has to ask, right? Why would someone spend twice as much money to buy our product versus buying a significantly less expensive product that can do the core functions are going to be the same? You can access the internet, you can check email, you can do word processing, you can do all these things. What's different? What's the vision that we have that we want to communicate? And really, you want to basically be asking that same kind of question. So if you're an Apple person, this is maybe a good segue to the next part. But if you're an Apple person, you have your own answers to that question, right? But you only have answers to that question in your mind because Apple answered that question first. Does that make sense, AJ?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Apple first developed the visionary message. And then, this is kind of segueing into our second question: who communicates the vision? So
Right.
In your church, by the way, I think we could probably, we have the Myers-Briggs, and we've got the DISC. The DISC is a little bit simpler for choice. We could probably boil all of humanity down into Apple and Microsoft. Couldn't we? Just like, how do those people relate to one another? What are their strengths and weaknesses?
I also want to be really clear here. I'm not trying to say let's take a business principle and and shoehorn it into the church. I just think sometimes it's helpful to think of a non-church example, and just maybe helps us see the principle from a different perspective.
It's just an example.
Just
So our second question is, who communicates the vision? So let's first start off in just talking strictly church. We believe that the pastor and then in plurality leadership, upper level leadership of the church are the chief vision communicators and developers in the church, but that vision can and probably should be developed, in some sort of plurality there of people in leadership. So if you want to sort of talk about maybe the hierarchy or the levels in which vision would be communicated, would start at the top and work its way down through various levels of leadership. And this is where kind of the beauty of this starts to come together. And we're going to, here in a moment, segue also into our third question of how should hearers respond to the vision. But the communication of the vision will start at the upper levels of the church and begin to filter its way down through sometimes directly, pastor communicating directly to the entire church on a Sunday morning. You're going from the top through every level of the church in one fell swoop. But vision communication doesn't happen on one Sunday and then we're done. Sometimes churches treat it that way, and the result is always the same. It goes nowhere. But it will go down over a long period of time, strategically communicated through levels of leadership. Then you'll begin to get it out to the people that need to hear it.
Yeah, I was recently talking with a pastor of a church in Tennessee, and he was his church is about to start the strategic envisioning process with us. I'm going to be working with them over the next several months. And one of the concerns from the congregation, or some people from the congregation, is that they've had, from their perspective, they've had a vision. They mentioned 2 or 3 different instances in the past where we had a vision, but then nothing changed. Nothing was any different. And I said, well, describe to me what those experiences were like. And he went on to tell me that he wasn't the pastor at the time, but most of those visions for the church came from their district. So they're part of a larger denomination, and the district told them, here's your vision. And so it was a totally passive experience. It was like, here's this vision and we're supposed to do something with it. And they never did. And so part of the problem was that the communication of that vision, AJ, was only ever from the district to the church. It never took root. And so it's hard for vision to make an impact in your church if the only people who own it is, totally centralized, just the pastor or just the elders. Even having elders who own it would be better than just the pastor. And this is why we see in churches all across the US, the vision of the church is whatever the new guy says it is. And then when he leaves, now we have no vision. And so you really want the communication of that vision to be owned by a lot of different stakeholders, not just the pastor, but by the elders. The most successful churches, AJ, that we've worked with in our strategic envisioning process are the ones where a broad cross-section of leaders both take an active role in shaping, but really owning and activating that vision over the long term. If it all falls on the pastor's shoulders, it's unlikely to work.
Yeah, that's true. So kind of bringing back in our Apple analogy here, or comparison of vision, and as far as communicating the vision, Apple depends hugely on their customer base and
people like
Scott
me.
Hall to communicate the vision of Apple through their own experience and how they relate to it, which is a really interesting aspect of vision communication. And I don't want you guys to miss this today either. The way the pastor perceives the vision, communicates the vision, and maybe even the aspects of it that he's most excited about may be different from you, the Sunday school teacher or the elder in the church. Whenever you capture the vision and you begin to envision yourself within it and the role that you play, you have a different facet of that vision, which very much is a multifaceted diamond. So how you relate to it, how you then talk about it to the people that you relate closest to, which maybe are other elders or other Sunday school teachers, or, similar people maybe to, what you do, maybe based on where you serve in the church. You guys are going to be talking about vision in a slightly different way. Not that, and it doesn't take away, it actually builds on the vision, because all of these facets of it have their own little groups that relate to it best when it's viewed from that angle. And so communicating the vision is slightly different, and it shouldn't be something where, we're like, here's our 5 talking points on vision, please don't deviate. I've never heard of a church that actually did that intentionally, though, maybe there were some things similar to that. But I think this is an interesting thing to keep in mind, that people will relate to it differently and talk about it differently. And that's good, because they're going to help kind of explain it to those. It may not be as clear whenever you say it, Pastor, but maybe it does gain clarity when Janet talks about it. So that's a good thing.
Yeah. So let me give you an example. I'm just browsing as we're talking here, AJ, I'm looking at the Apple's website, and, it's talking about the Mac Mini, smaller, cheaper desktop computer that they have. And they're saying, it says here, 16 core neural engine. It's the brains of the operation. Machine learning brings task smashing speed and automation to voice recognition and more. And the M1 chip, it's all these full stack of ML technologies. This is their language for it. If you asked me, why do I care about having a Mac? What do I like about having this computer sitting on my desk? I would tell you that yesterday I had to edit a video, and it exported that video in 46 seconds. That's what I care. I don't know anything about machine learning, 16 core neural engine. Why should you buy task smashing technology? I'm sure some executive thought, or some marketing person was like, task smashing, that will sound good. But if you ask me, why do you love having a Mac? I'd be like, because I turn it on, it doesn't give me problems. And when I exported that video, it took 46 seconds. And so I have more time to do something else. Now, is that in the same vein as task smashing? Probably, but I would never use that language because I would sound like an idiot. The point is, I get what Apple's trying to do with their computers, and I'm in. I'm all in on it. I'm never going to buy something other. Probably, it would take a lot for me to buy something different because I'm all in on this at this point. But the way that I would communicate that to AJ or to you, podcast listener, why I like the Apple machine that I have is never going to be what Apple puts on the website. And the point that AJ is making and that I'm trying to reinforce here is that it's actually a success of the vision when you start hearing people express the vision in their own words. So don't get so tied up in how you typed it out on your computer in your office or the language that you put on the website. You want people to understand where you're going and then be able to internalize that and express it in their own way. Yeah. And that's a good thing.
Yeah, there we go. And that's our segue into our third question. How should hearers of the vision respond to the vision? Well, really, the bottom line is that they then become communicators of the vision themselves. So, I think this is kind of a really interesting, if you can visualize this, I mean, we've got this finite thing. We have this church, we got 400 people in it, and we've got 1 or 5 or 8 that begin to talk about this vision. And then 20 start talking about it, and then 100 start talking about it. And what we're going for is for 400 people to become communicators of the vision, not for continuously there to be 150 communicators of the vision and 250 hearers of the vision. We're going for everybody responding as becoming vision casters themselves to whatever their sphere of influence then becomes. Connection to Easter, you're going to have a lot of guests in your church, and hopefully you're going to begin to convert them into regular attenders and members and active participants in your ministry. They're going to need to hear the vision. Who are they going to hear it from? Probably the week after Easter. You're probably not going to be your next point that you're just going to really hammer home the vision, but they will hear it from the people that they happen to be sitting next to or that are in their Sunday school class that they decided to visit on week 2. And so people should respond to the vision, to answer the question, by becoming vision casters themselves in whatever the thing is that they're attracted to about it, that they see themselves in it, and that they're able to participate going forward in it. So your goal is to turn your church into vision casters, not to continuously have a division of casters and hearers.
Right. That's really well said. A question that I will commonly get is, how should we write our vision statement? And I'm pretty, I feel a little bit like your vision should be something, it's like a well that you dip into and visionary language that you pull out of it. And don't be so, we often talk about vision being a picture, right? So if you maybe on, I've just kind of have a generic background on my computer, but I know a lot of people like to maybe have a desktop background of maybe some beach or some mountain or something that they want to go to, or where they're going on vacation next or something. And what's static is that picture that stays the same, but then 10 different people could look at that picture and use different language to describe it, but they're all describing the same thing. And your vision needs to be very much like that. It needs to be like a picture that 10 different people in your church could share the same picture, but maybe have different words to describe that exact same thing. And so don't get hung up on how it's worded. Or is it a paragraph? Is it a sentence? Is it bullet points? I don't care. It needs to be a clear picture of where you're going, and then how people describe that kind of should be different. It should be, success is not 400 people parroting the exact same language that came out of your mouth. It's people internalizing and owning that, and then being able to describe where you're going in their own words. That's success. So
yeah, that's good. Kind of convicted me here for a moment, Scott, as well. I have a mountain picture on my computer, and it's a mountain scene from a place that I've been. And it was like, oh, look at how great that was when I achieved my goal, if you want to call it that, of going to that place and having that experience. But you know what? My bucket list is to climb Mount Kilimanjaro in Africa. I should have a picture of the mountain I haven't yet climbed in front of me, not a picture of the mountain I've already been to. So, vision has got to stay out in front of people, and it can't be a picture of where you've been. It's got to be a picture of where you're going, to get people, interested in it and looking forward to being there with you. So
Right.
yeah, take the time to get a clear vision message out to your church and watch how God works through that to rally those folks together to achieve it together. And I think you'll be really excited about what you begin to see unfold in your church, because we've got a lot of examples of this as it begins to play out with churches that we
Yeah.
have the pleasure and benefit of working with. So yeah.
Yeah.
I hope
So
this
as
is-
just to kind of recap, AJ, before we
yeah,
hit the end button on this, take some time, not this week because you got Easter coming up, but take some time in the next couple of weeks. It's actually a really good time to be thinking about this because you probably are going to have some new people hanging around, and maybe not, preferably not by yourself, with a couple of other leaders that are on your team, whether they be lay leaders or other staff, whomever. Go through these 3 questions. What is our visionary message? Do we even know what that picture is? If you don't have a picture in your mind of where the church is going that's shared, that's problem number 1. Apple can only write the words task smashing because they first really had a vision for what it is they wanted to do, right? So similarly, the vision really does start with leaders. It does start with you as a leader. And if you don't know what that is, it needs to start with you all first. So what is that visionary message? Secondly, who communicates the vision? If it's all on you as the pastor, it's going to fail. It needs to be something that's owned by, initially at least, those leaders that you maybe collaborated with on creating the vision. But then also a wider and wider audience should own that and communicate it. And then thirdly, how should hearers respond to it? Hearing it and going, oh, that's cool, is not good. It should be something that they hear and then want to participate in and own. And then, like you talked about, AJ, they become advocates as well. They shift from being hearers to communicators of the vision. So what is the visionary message? Who communicates the vision? How should hearers respond to our vision? And if you answer those questions together as a team, I think it'd be good for you. I think you'd be further along in the vision process.
There you go. This has been episode 135 of the Church Revitalization Podcast. And you can read today's article at malforsgroup.com/135. And you know what? As just kind of those who practice what they preach, we have a vision as well. And that is to equip churches to make and mature disciples worldwide. And on the international aspect, it is to do that at no cost to those churches. And we can't do that without your support. And so if you would like to participate in our vision, we would love to talk with you about that, your church as a mission partner with us, or you as an individual. So you can find out more information at malforsgroup.com/donate, where we talk a little bit more about our vision and how we need you to help us achieve it. So thanks for being with us, and we'll see you next week.